The morning air carried the scent of rain and fresh bread from the bakery down the street. Marcus stood on a wooden stool in his small kitchen, carefully spreading peanut butter across 2 slices of wheat bread. His hands, though small, moved with the precision of someone who had learned to navigate a world not built for him. At 3 feet 9 inches tall, every surface in his home required adaptation. Every task demanded creativity. But he never complained. Not anymore. From the living room came the soft sound of crayons scratching against paper. His son, 6-year-old Daniel, sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing houses with tall chimneys and trees with sprawling branches. The boy's dark hair fell across his forehead, hiding eyes that held depths of emotion Marcus could only guess at. Daniel hadn't spoken a single word in over a year. Marcus remembered the before times with piercing clarity. Daniel's voice had been like music, high and sweet, always asking questions, always laughing. "Daddy, why is the sky blue? Daddy, can we get ice cream? Daddy, I love you this much." The boy would stretch his arms as wide as they could go, and Marcus would scoop him up, and they would dance around the living room until they both collapsed in giggles. Then Sarah left. She hadn't planned to stay long. Marcus knew that now. She'd made her position clear during one of their final arguments, her voice cold and clinical. "I never signed up for this, Marcus. A husband people stare at everywhere we go. A son who's probably going to have issues because of genetics. I'm 28 years old. I deserve a normal life." The divorce papers came 3 weeks later. She packed her bags on a Tuesday morning while Daniel was at kindergarten. Marcus came home from his job at the library to find half their possessions gone and a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore. You'll be better off without me dragging you down. Don't try to contact me." Daniel stopped talking the day he realized his mother wasn't coming back. Marcus wrapped the sandwich in wax paper and placed it carefully in Daniel's superhero lunchbox. He added apple slices, a juice box, and a small note with a hand-drawn heart. He left notes every day, even though Daniel never acknowledged them. Hope was a muscle Marcus refused to let atrophy. "Danny boy," Marcus called softly. "Time to get ready for school, buddy." Daniel looked up, his expression unreadable. He stood slowly, setting down his crayons with methodical care, and walked to the bathroom. No words, no resistance, just silent compliance that broke Marcus's heart a little more each day. The school was a 15-minute drive through neighborhoods where people lived in houses with white picket fences and 2-car garages. Marcus drove a modified Honda Civic with extended pedals and a raised seat. He'd learned to ignore the stares at stoplights, the way people's eyes would widen when they noticed him behind the wheel, then quickly look away as if caught doing something shameful. The drop-off line moved slowly. Parents in SUVs chatted on their phones, sipped their lattes, checked their makeup in rearview mirrors. Marcus pulled up to the curb and helped Daniel out, adjusting the boy's backpack straps. "Have a good day, son," he said, pressing his hand against Daniel's cheek. "I love you." Daniel's eyes met his for just a moment. Sad, searching eyes that held questions Marcus didn't know how to answer. Then the boy turned and walked toward the school entrance, his small shoulders hunched, his steps slow. Marcus watched until Daniel disappeared through the double doors. He always did. The library where Marcus worked was a sanctuary. Books didn't judge. Stories didn't mock. The head librarian, Mrs. Chen, had hired him 5 years ago despite the concerns of some board members who worried about his ability to reach high shelves and assist tall patrons. "Intelligence and kindness don't have height requirements," she'd told them firmly. Marcus loved her for that. He spent his mornings reshelving returns, his afternoons helping patrons find what they needed, his evenings in the children's section, reading stories to kids who sat in a semicircle on the colorful carpet. The children loved him. They didn't see his dwarfism as a barrier. They saw him as someone their size, someone who understood their perspective. Their laughter was medicine. But today, Marcus couldn't focus. He kept thinking about Daniel's silence, about the way speech therapists and child psychologists had tried and failed to coax words from his son. "He has no physical impairment," they'd said. "This is selective mutism, likely trauma-induced. He needs time, patience, and a stable environment." Marcus provided all of that. But time was passing, and Daniel remained trapped in his silence. The afternoon dragged. Marcus organized the mystery section, helped a teenager find resources for a history project, and processed a stack of new arrivals. His mind wandered constantly. When 5 o'clock finally came, he clocked out and drove straight to the school's after-care program. Daniel sat alone at a table coloring. Other children played tag, built with blocks, laughed and shouted. His son existed in a bubble of solitude. "Mr. Brennan?" A young woman approached, her smile warm but tentative. "I'm Emma. Emma Richardson. I just started here this week as an aide." Marcus looked up and up. Emma was tall, perhaps 5'10", with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and green eyes that held genuine kindness. She wore simple clothes, jeans, a cream-colored sweater, comfortable shoes. No makeup, no jewelry except for a silver watch. She knelt down so they were at eye level, a gesture Marcus noticed and appreciated. "Nice to meet you," he said, shaking her offered hand. "I've been watching Daniel," Emma said carefully. "He's very talented. His drawings are remarkably detailed for his age." "He is talented," Marcus agreed, pride and sadness warring in his chest. "He just doesn't talk much." "I noticed." Emma glanced toward Daniel, her expression thoughtful. "Would you mind if I tried something with him? Nothing invasive, just a different approach. I studied child development and worked with nonverbal children before." Marcus wanted to protect his son from more disappointment, more failed interventions. But something in Emma's eyes made him nod. "Okay, but please don't push him. He's been through enough." "I understand," Emma said softly. "I promise." She walked over to Daniel's table and sat down beside him, not across from him. She didn't speak at first, just picked up a crayon and began drawing on her own sheet of paper. Marcus watched from the doorway, his heart in his throat. Minutes passed. Emma drew a garden with flowers and butterflies. Daniel glanced at her work, then continued with his own drawing, a castle with towers and flags. Emma added a dragon to her garden. Daniel's pencil paused. He looked at her dragon, then carefully drew his own in the corner of his castle scene. Emma smiled, but didn't comment. She simply continued drawing, her movements relaxed and unhurried. She drew a knight approaching the dragon. Daniel drew a princess in one of the castle windows. Still, no words were exchanged. But something was happening. Marcus could feel it, a connection, fragile as spider silk, forming between this stranger and his silent son. After 20 minutes, Emma stood and nodded at Marcus. Daniel began packing his crayons, his movements slightly less mechanical than usual. "Thank you," Marcus said when Emma walked back over. "He's going to be okay," Emma said with quiet certainty. "He just needs to know it's safe to open up again." That night, Marcus made spaghetti while Daniel did homework at the kitchen table. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that opened into a living room barely big enough for a couch and TV. But it was clean, warm, filled with Daniel's artwork, taped to the walls and photos of better times displayed on every surface. "I met someone today," Marcus said as he stirred the sauce. "Her name is Emma. She seems nice." Daniel didn't look up from his math worksheet. "She draws really well. Maybe as well as you." Marcus smiled, though his son couldn't see it. "Would you like it if she worked with you some more?" Daniel's pencil stopped moving. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, the boy nodded. It was the first clear response Daniel had given to anything in weeks. Marcus had to turn away, blinking back tears as he stirred the spaghetti sauce with trembling hands. Emma came the next day, and the day after that. She never arrived as a therapist or authority figure. She came as a friend, sitting beside Daniel during aftercare, drawing with him, building with blocks, reading books side by side. She never demanded speech. She never even requested it. She simply existed in his space, with patient, accepting presence. Marcus found himself arriving earlier to pick up Daniel, lingering to watch them interact. Emma had a gift, a way of making people feel seen without pressure, accepted without judgment. She reminded him of the librarian who'd given him his first job, the neighbor who'd brought casseroles after Sarah left, the teacher who'd told him in third grade that being different was a superpower, not a curse. On Friday of Emma's second week, she approached Marcus with hesitation in her eyes. "I have a favor to ask," she said, "and please feel free to say no. I'll completely understand." "What is it?" "I'm starting a weekend program at the community center. Art therapy for kids dealing with trauma, grief, changes at home. I think Daniel would benefit from being around other children who understand what silence feels like." Emma twisted her watch, nervous. "I know you don't know me well. I know asking to spend more time with your son might seem strange, but I really think this could help." Marcus studied her face. The earnestness there, the genuine care, every instinct he'd developed as a single father screamed caution. But every hope he held for Daniel's healing whispered yes. "Okay," he said finally. "We'll try it." The community center smelled like old wood and floor polish. Emma led them to a bright room filled with art supplies, comfortable cushions, and 5 other children ranging from ages 5 to 10. A girl with a prosthetic leg, a boy in a wheelchair, twin sisters who held hands constantly, a child who rocked gently, humming to himself. "Everyone here has a story," Emma explained to the parents gathered in the hallway. "Everyone here has been hurt or lost or scared. But everyone here is also brave, strong, and worthy of love. We don't force anything. We just create space for healing." Marcus watched through the doorway as Emma guided the children through a painting exercise. Not painting specific things, just painting feelings, colors and shapes and whatever wanted to emerge. Daniel hesitated at first, then slowly dipped his brush in blue paint. He created sweeping strokes across the paper, waves maybe, or wind. The girl with the prosthetic leg painted flowers. The boy in the wheelchair painted rockets. The twins painted a single image together, their brushes moving in synchronized harmony. The rocking child painted spirals that spun across multiple sheets of paper. Emma moved between them, offering encouragement, wiping spills, simply being present. And Marcus saw something he hadn't seen in a year. Daniel smiled. It was small. It was brief. But it was real. Weeks became months. The Saturday art sessions became the highlight of Daniel's week. He began sleeping better, eating more, engaging with his drawings in ways that suggested returning joy rather than mere occupation. He still didn't speak, but his eyes grew brighter. His shoulders lifted. He started initiating hugs again, something he'd stopped doing after Sarah left. Marcus and Emma began having coffee after the sessions. She told him about growing up in foster care, about learning that family wasn't always about blood, but about choice and commitment. She told him about studying child psychology in community college while working 3 jobs, about her dream of opening a center where hurting kids could find hope. He told her about being born with achondroplasia, about surgeries and bullying and learning to build a life in a world designed for people twice his size. He told her about meeting Sarah in college, about believing she saw past his height, about the devastation of learning he'd been wrong. He told her about Daniel's silence and his own helplessness in the face of it. "You're not helpless," Emma said firmly. You're showing up every single day. You're giving him stability and love. That's not nothing, Marcus. That's everything. Their friendship deepened. Emma started joining them for Sunday dinners, simple meals of roasted chicken or lasagna or tacos, eaten at the small kitchen table while Daniel colored and Marcus washed dishes and Emma told stories that made both father and son feel less alone. People at the community center began talking. Marcus heard the whispers, saw the sidelong glances. A beautiful young woman spending so much time with a dwarf and his troubled son? The gossip was predictable and cruel. She must feel sorry for them. It's probably some kind of savior complex. What else would explain it? Emma heard the whispers too. One evening, after Daniel had gone to bed, she stood in Marcus's tiny kitchen with tears in her eyes. "I need you to know something," she said, her voice fierce. "I'm not here out of pity. I'm not here because I think you or Daniel need saving. I'm here because being with you both makes me happy. Because you're both extraordinary people. Because this," she gestured around the modest apartment, "this feels more like home than anywhere I've ever been." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept carefully guarded since the divorce. "Emma, You don't have to say anything," she interrupted gently. "I just needed you to know." But Marcus did have something to say. He'd been holding it back for weeks, terrified of rejection, of being too much or not enough. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "And that scares me to death because the last time I trusted someone with my heart, she walked away. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way." Emma crossed the small kitchen in 2 steps and knelt down, bringing herself to his eye level once more. "I'm not her, Marcus. I see you. All of you. And I'm not going anywhere." She kissed him then, gentle and certain, and Marcus felt tears stream down his face because he'd forgotten what it felt like to be chosen, to be wanted, to be loved not despite who he was, but because of it. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning at the community center, something miraculous happened. The children were working on a group project, a mural depicting a garden where everyone belonged. Daniel had been carefully painting butterflies, his attention focused, his movements sure. Emma sat beside him, adding birds to the branches of a tree. The other children worked around them, chattering and laughing. Then Emma's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. "I have to take this," she said, standing quickly. "It's about my foster brother. He's been in the hospital." She stepped into the hallway, her voice muffled but urgent. Marcus could see her pacing, could see her distress even through the glass door. The other children continued painting, unaware. But Daniel set down his brush. He watched Emma through the door, his small face creased with concern. He stood, walked to the door, pressed his hand against the glass. Emma hung up, and Marcus saw her wiping tears from her face. She took a deep breath, composing herself before returning to the room. Daniel opened the door for her. "Are you okay?" he asked. The room went silent. Every child stopped painting. Every parent in the hallway froze. Marcus felt his heart stop entirely. Daniel had spoken. Clear, concerned, perfect words. Emma dropped to her knees in front of him, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I will be," she said softly. "Thank you for asking." Daniel reached out and hugged her, something he'd never done before, initiating physical comfort for someone else's pain. "It's okay to be sad," he said, his voice still a bit rough from disuse, but unmistakably his. "Daddy says feelings are like weather. They change." Marcus couldn't move. He stood in the doorway, watching his son speak, watching Emma hold him close, watching a miracle unfold in a paint-splattered community center room. "That's very wise," Emma said, pulling back to look at Daniel's face. "Your daddy is a smart man." "The smartest," Daniel agreed. Then he looked at Marcus. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Marcus crossed the room, his vision blurred with tears, and wrapped his arms around both of them. "Because I'm happy, buddy. Because I'm so, so happy." The words came slowly at first. Daniel would go hours without speaking, then suddenly offer observations or questions. But the dam had broken. Whatever wall had been built around his voice was crumbling, brick by brick. At school, teachers wept when he raised his hand to answer a question. At the library, Mrs. Chen clapped her hands in delight when he asked if he could check out a book about dinosaurs. At home, Marcus recorded every precious word, storing them like treasures in his memory. But the most important conversation happened 3 months later, on a quiet evening when Marcus was tucking Daniel into bed. "Daddy?" Daniel said, his voice small in the darkness. "Yes, buddy?" "Is Emma going to leave like Mommy did?" Marcus's heart clenched. He sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. "No, Daniel, Emma is staying. She loves us, and we love her. And love isn't about being perfect or looking a certain way or fitting someone else's idea of normal. Love is about choosing each other every day, even when things are hard. Do you think Mommy loves us?" The question was a knife. Marcus wanted to lie to protect his son from the truth, but Daniel deserved honesty. "I think Mommy loved us the best way she knew how, but sometimes people's best isn't enough. Sometimes people are too scared or too hurt to stay, and that's sad, but it's not our fault. You and I, we're going to be okay. We have each other, and we have Emma, and that's more than enough." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'm glad Emma stayed." "Me too, buddy. Me too." A year after Emma first walked into their lives, Marcus stood in the backyard of a small house they'd purchased together. It had modified counters, accessible light switches, and a studio space where Emma could run her art therapy program. It had a room for Daniel with walls he could paint however he wanted. It had a garden where they planted vegetables and flowers together every spring. Emma came outside carrying lemonade, her engagement ring catching the sunlight. They'd gotten married in a small ceremony at the community center, surrounded by the children from the program and the library patrons who'd become family and Mrs. Chen, who'd officiated and cried through the entire ceremony. Daniel ran through the sprinkler, shrieking with laughter, his voice clear and strong and utterly beautiful. He'd started first grade in the fall, made friends, joined the art club, and talked endlessly about everything from clouds to comic books to the proper way to make a peanut butter sandwich. "Did you ever imagine this?" Emma asked, settling beside Marcus on the porch step. Marcus looked at his son, at his wife, at the home they'd built together. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, the pain and rejection, the silence and sadness, the slow, patient work of healing. "No," he said honestly. "I imagined surviving. I imagined getting through each day. But this I never dared to dream." Emma took his hand. "Well, dream bigger from now on, because this is just the beginning." Daniel ran over, dripping wet, grinning wide. "Dad! Emma! Come play with me!" And they did. They ran through the sprinkler, all three of them, laughing until their sides hurt, until the sun began to set and the sky turned orange and pink and gold. They were a family, imperfect, unconventional, absolutely extraordinary. They were proof that love doesn't require perfection or conformity. It only requires presence, patience, and the courage to keep choosing each other every single day. That night, as Marcus stood in Daniel's doorway watching his son sleep, he thought about the man he'd been a year ago, broken, desperate, barely holding on. He thought about the moment Emma had walked into their lives, not as a savior, but as a fellow traveler, someone who understood that healing isn't about fixing what's broken, but about learning to live fully despite the cracks. He thought about his son's first words in over a year. "Are you okay?" Not about himself, not about his own pain, about someone else's. That's when Marcus knew they were going to make it. Not because the pain was gone. It would always be there, a scar they'd carry forward. But because they'd learned that love is stronger than silence, that family is built through choice, and that sometimes the most beautiful things emerge from the deepest wounds. He closed Daniel's door softly and walked down the hall to the room he shared with Emma. She was already in bed, reading, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked up and smiled, and Marcus felt his heart expand with gratitude so profound it bordered on pain. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For seeing us. For staying. For teaching Daniel and me that we're worth loving." Emma set down her book and held out her hand. "You were always worth loving, Marcus. Both of you. I'm just glad I got to be the one to remind you." He crossed the room and climbed into bed beside her, and she wrapped her arms around him, and he let himself be held. Outside, the world continued spinning, full of people who would judge and stare and whisper. But inside this home, inside this family, there was only love. And that, Marcus had learned, was everything. So if this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Share what moved you most in this journey. Your thoughts and feelings mean the world to us. And don't forget to like this video, because your support helps us continue bringing stories like this to you. Stories that remind us all that love transcends every boundary we create, that healing is always possible, and that family is built not through perfection, but through presence. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing, as we do, that every person, no matter their size, their voice, their story, deserves to be loved completely. Until next time, keep choosing kindness, keep choosing hope, and keep choosing love.